Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Pinball Arcade. So last time we did No Fear, which was a combination of extreme sports, which then kind of just, at a certain point, was just a combination of several other uh, sports games, sports tables we've done before. So we've been getting a lot of sports. The good news is with Theater of Fear, there's pretty much no more sports tables until we hit the crash in the mid 90s of pinball as far as this curation is concerned. Um, and we can tell that because Theater of Magic doesn't have a pro mode, it was one of the very first tables released in that first generation, which it probably would be a lot more obvious in retrospect which tables were the best tables in the minds of Pinball Arcade, because they don't have the pro modes. And why do they not have the pro modes? Is because they didn't uh, they knew they didn't invent that as a concept until later. Honestly though, the pro mode has proven itself to be completely useless. It doesn't really add anything to the gameplay, at least on my computer. The ball control cheating mode does not work. You can't get up ramps with them. You can barely half the time even get the ball to go up in a on when it's just in the middle of the play field. Um, Having operator menus doesn't work half the time because it crashes the emulation, so that's pretty useless too. Um, and a tilt warning is something we haven't even looked at or cared about, because every single table warns you about tilt, with very few exceptions. Maybe some of the 60 era tables don't warn you about tilt, but everything else that had any kind of digital screen would have warned you about tilt.
The theater awaits.
Now, it's been a long time since I played Theater of Magic, and I do remember playing it in a movie theater, small corner of an arcade, which, yeah, a lot of arcades in movie theaters and other places were just, this corner is empty, let's put a few arcade machines there. Uh, and maybe they'll put a carpet to depict that this is the arcade section, but no real walls or large square footage consigned to it. The table that I played was not maintained well at all. In fact, it's probably the only example of me going to an arcade and finding a table that is just not cared for. Because if you went to an arcade and something said it was out of order, that means somebody cared enough to look at the pinball tables or the arcade machines and monitor them and put an out of order sign on it. Uh, but if you go to an arcade and something clearly isn't working quite right, and they haven't bothered to put an out of order sign, and it's still capable of putting a quarter in and wasting your money, that's when you know you're in a poorly maintained arcade, and that was definitely the case. So there's a lot of gadgets on Theater of Magic. It takes the concept of doing magic tricks and making the ball disappear on one part of the table and appear on another part of the table. There's magnet things. There's a lot of moving parts on Theater of Magic. Theater of Magic in general as a table is probably a very difficult table to maintain. Um, yeah, it's not super surprising that the one I played was pretty damaged. But by pretty damaged, I mean like one or two feature doesn't work. I don't mean that the table was falling apart at the seams. I've never seen a table that bad. Um, but if even one feature on a pinball table doesn't work, then you're not getting the proper experience. And that is inherently the problem with owning a real world pinball table, is that you are effectively owning a classic car at that point, and you have to do everything to just maintain it and improve it, um, and do everything in your power to not damage it. And arguably, even with the best intentions, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people try to maintain old pinball tables and don't do the perfect job, and they're slowly wearing them down to the point where 300-400 years from now, there will be no pinball tables left. Preserving things like this with so many mechanical parts is kind of unlikely to happen. And we really would be for people to start making replicas, and the replicas have the same value because of their historical value, more instead of them being devalued because they're not originals and not collectibles. Uh, Moving on, Theater of Magic 1995 was designed by John Popadiuk. This spellbinding theater of pinball magic is one of the highest rated tables of all time and a favorite with pinball players both young and old. With a dazzling array of unique features, players will discover the wonders of the magician trunk, where balls can levitate and disappear, the powers of the spirit ring, a mysterious trapdoor leading to a haunted basement, offering a host of surprises, and the amazing mirror that seems to be an impossible extension of the playfield into a quest to master 8 different mesmerizing illusions. 6,600 units of this table were produced. Now that number is massively higher than a lot of the other tables we've seen in the 1990s, late 1990s. We've been seeing tables that make 2,000, 1,000 units. But it's not super surprising that a lot of these tables were, that this table did have a lot of units, because this table is very visually unique. Certainly. Unfortunately, we don't have a pro mode, so take a look at the back glass. You have a lady with a pinball flying out of her hand. I suppose she's the magician of the story. You don't get, I suppose, too much into details of that. In real world magic, women magicians until, I'd say about 2012, 2013, women magicians were extremely rare. And ironically, women assistants to magicians often were doing way more work than the magicians were. The classic song "A Woman in Half," for instance, is like almost all the work in that trick is done by the woman assistant, and the male presenter is just really miming and acting. There is some darker side, certainly, around magicians too, that they had a level of secrecy around their magic tricks that was too high. They took it too serious for a very long time. There are some bad actors amongst magicians who would take on usually young male apprentices and then do inappropriate things to the young males, and that doesn't get talked about as enough as it should have been talked about. And inherently, magicians as a personality, and this is a very generalized generalization, is they work this career where they're literally lying to everybody all day and all night. So it does seem to go to the heads of a lot of magicians, and they either become egomaniacs or just psychos. You only have to look at a great example, which is Randy Pitchford, who is the CEO of Gearbox, which makes the Borderlands games for 2K. But he is also considers himself a professional magician. He was a magician before he was the CEO of Gearbox. And when you look at a lot of the controversies around him, of which there's been tons of controversies, one of the major ones that is undeniable is the way he runs his business is through secrets and lies and just general bad decision making and bad unprofessional attitudes. So yeah, it's weird to start off just saying magicians kind of suck, but the truth is they kind of do suck as human beings. They can do amazing things and show a show, but they're like actors. Most actors also suck, and so you have to take that as part of the understanding there, is that they may be good at one thing. Anyways, that get away from that rant. On this table, you kind of have that fan standard layout. There's several ramps. There's a captive ball from there's starting on the left. There's a left out lane, and then there's two captive balls, and then there is a ramp that ramps back in kind of a horseshoe, and then to the right of that you have the magician's chest, and the magician's chest spins 90 degrees each time it decides to spin. So you start and treat it like a standing target, and you just knock the ball into it, which that's kind of crazy because that does say they had to design some kind of material that could get hit by a pinball a lot without it breaking, and I'm not sure they actually ever did do that. Uh, but yeah, you knock the flat side. At one point, it turns, and then there's a magnet on one side. So they also squeezed a lot of technology on into it. At another point, it turns, and it I think acts as a scoop. And I can't even remember what the fourth side is, but you notice since it's a big box, they have 4 pegs around it, and the horseshoe is kind of open where the ball could potentially get stuck if you nudged it. So they have to be fairly careful about that. But the pegs clearly are there so you don't just hit the edge of the box and either spin it or chip it off. To the right of the magician's chest, you have another ramp that looks like it goes all the way up to several ramps on the left. And then there's another magnet, which is what that big circular metal thing to the left is, that will make a ball levitate. And then to the right of that ramp is what looks like another sinkhole or horseshoe. Yeah, no, that's the out lane of the horseshoe. And then to the right of that is another ramp. And notice that there's actually a piece of plastic between the outlane of the horseshoe and the ramp to the right of it, because they wanted to get the angle just right. We should have seen that in a lot more tables. I'm not seeing a ton of standing targets between each ramp. I see it for the one ramp in the middle that's kind of a center lane shot, but then the ramp to the right just has regular bumpers. And then to the right of that ramp on the right is the wider horseshoe. There's a lot of stuff going on as far as design. Notice that this table isn't doing that hideous thing of having just giant 3D models on the edges to make it look more decorated. If something is decorated here, it is done with just flat art, and there's a reason for it. Now, I will say, the launch lane here is doing that thing that I don't like, which does definitely make an argument that there's just no perfect table, where I would have preferred if the launch lane shot to the side and could potentially either hit the horseshoe or the captive balls or the chest during a skill shot launch. The right ramp also has a thing on the table that is drawn like a door that pops up, and the ball gets sunk under that table. Clearly there's 8 missions to do, and we want to spell theater, and I'm not sure if there's a kickback, but I think there is. It would make a lot of sense for a table like this to have a kickback. There's 2 standing targets to the far left, and it seems like kind of nothing else. No third flipper, which arguably a lot of tables that do have the third flipper would be better if they didn't have the third flipper. That might just be my personal preference. Notice that the left ramp is plastic while the right ramp is metal, and I guess if you have both options, you should take it. In theming a table like this, you could have gone with real world magic, but if you go real world magic, then you're making something like the Sorcerer Supreme, or one of Marvel things, where magic just doesn't really matter and it can change at any point. Whereas you limit yourself to theater magic and fake magic, and then you can play on tropes that are a little bit more noticeable. Like Constantine, as a comic book, could come up with any magic spell to accomplish any goal. Whereas limiting yourself to theater magic, it's sawing a woman in half, a magical trunk. And in all honesty, in 2016, a lot of these tricks probably aren't even that common or that popular, as magic has kind of changed and opportunities to actually see magicians has changed a lot. Street magic was not a thing that really existed when this table would have been designed. The masked magician revealing a lot of these stale tricks that were being done by everybody probably hadn't quite happened by the time this had come out. So tricks like linking rings, for instance, which every magician was doing at some point, hadn't been revealed enough that people stopped doing it. I watch a TV show called Penn and Teller Fool Us, where they try to bring out new magicians to do new tricks, or different variations on tricks so they feel like new tricks, and that is incredibly better magic when you watch it than watching a standard stage play that hasn't changed in 30 years and they're doing just the same thing over and over again. Like, honestly, if you go to a magician's performance and they pull out linking rings, you might as well just walk out, because you're not going to see anything new. They're going to hide $1 in an orange. They're going to, or an egg. They're going to do the linking rings. They're going to do a levitating woman. They're going to maybe saw a woman in half. It's going to be the same old things with nothing. And there is definitely a level of kind of bad quality of magic that you'll get if you go to like a stage performance at like a local theater compared to what you see on TV or the internet. And so you can be incredibly disappointed if you know magic at all. And that's why I mostly would only suggest going to see a magician live if you were an extremely, extremely young kid. Like, by the time they're 14 or 15, if they're still into seeing magicians live, they are either going to end up being a magician or they have some kind of mental disability, because people get bored of it very quickly, almost always. We can look here and look at the flyer to see the lady a little bit more. They are kind of selling on sex here. That is quite a bit of cleavage, and I feel like that amount of cleavage on this flyer was then modified slightly on the backboard. But I think there is something to be said around the idea of, yeah, if you go to see a magic show in Las Vegas, there's a decent chance that the assistants will be very scantily clad, dressed, if not straight up topless. And that's not just from Las Vegas magic shows. That's also a possibility in most shows in Las Vegas. But if you see those same acts outside of Vegas and outside of more less conservative areas, more liberal areas, you'll find that they dress down and cover up more. But yeah, I don't think the table probably needed that. The blonde lady being levitated in the background, then it just shows the table on this. I really wish you could zoom in more than it lets you. It is really ridiculous, the level scale here. Like, I would like to be able to zoom in whenever I can zoom in on anything. I'd like to be able to zoom in down to a pixel almost. Well, at least down to the point where it starts to look blurry. They didn't draw her outfit particularly well as a magician. Here, she has black hair, which is fine, but then a black tie, which is wrong. And it should have been a white tie or a red tie. And then she has this black vest, which is fine. But then you needed a belt of some sort, either a white cummerbund or a gold belt or something to break up the outfit. And then black pants is a little bit on the nose. At that point, you probably would want to go with maybe a purple or a red. The only reason you would be in all black like this is because you're doing some magic trick that is going to require you to hide all of your skin and sneak around in the shadows in the background. But if you were going to do that, then you would also need something to cover your chest, your head, and your hands. And I don't think that the main magician would do that. So this really just screams that this is probably a male who drew this outfit and didn't think about color palette matching or anything. Even thematically with the rest of the table, there's a lot of orange going on in that background and a lot of silver going back in that background. So you could have, at the very least, put a silver stripe down the pants or put some kind of pattern there. When your only focus is to draw a cleavage, and arguably the cleavage isn't even drawn that well, because it makes it seem like her left boob, from her perspective, is way, way bigger and offset compared to her right boob. So, yeah, there's still progress that needs to be made in the ways of integrating and embracing the feminism. So we're taking forever to start. We want to enter the haunted basement. We want to start a magic multiball, make the ball vanish, spell theater, and earn an extra ball for our standard goals. Let's see if we can get the ball to start.
Welcome to the Theater of Magic.
So it's a digital thing, so we can start an illusion, 10 million, advanced clock. Let's just start an illusion. The loop spell theater, and yes, it was the chest part that was broken when I played this table, and with it being broken, I don't even think that they went into it.
Shoot for the magic trunk.
So it's spun around now into the scoop version.
Hocus pocus.
And it's not the widest thing ever. I just pulled the trigger and caught it and made it levitate. I think I did that, and that wasn't automatic.
Hocus pocus.
Which that is certainly a problem with any game, is that if there are automatic elements, you can make some players think that they're doing it when they really aren't.
Shoot for the trapdoor.
Trapdoor's open.
1 o'clock.
It pops the whole thing up instead of trying to move the ramp up, which that is a different idea, certainly.
Lock is lit.
Go for the ticket. Shoot for the trapdoor. It's 2 o'clock.
There, we got it. So we started an illusion.
Shoot for the captive ball.
So, Tiger Saw is kind of like
Captive ball.
combining
First ball is locked.
the idea of
You must concentrate.
having Siegfried and Roy and tigers on the stage during your magnetic show. And this is the magnet side that will hold the ball and start multi-ball. And it actually did do that. It drops the ball in the back, and there's a sneak-in hole in the back, I think.
Multiball. Shoot for
And
the trunk.
it's interesting that it can scoop and pop the ball out of that treasure chest too. So our jackpot on this 3-ball multi-ball is to hit the chest. And then now we have a blinking light side. I'm not sure what the blinking light side of the chest actually does. It may just be another thing you can hit. Spirit ring is lit. I assume the spirit ring might be the magnet.
Hocus pocus.
It is kind of a genius move to have a pop-up hole that isn't taking up space on the table a lot of time, and it acts as the shootout. Ooh, a magnet save. I didn't realize that was something that existed.
Vanish.
So we just made a ball vanish. Interesting. Suppose it's worth mentioning, in case anybody doesn't know, that Siegfried and Roy
is about to begin.
pretty much went out of business and retired. They were fairly old anyways, after many years of having lions on in their stage show. One of the lions or tigers or one of the big cats of some sort attacked, I believe it was Siegfried, and mauled his face up pretty bad. I don't think he eventually died of that, but he died fairly quickly after that point.
Shoot for the spinner.
So maybe he did eventually die from that, I can't remember. Regardless, that was pretty much the end of the idea of anybody having large animals in stage shows, and many years later, even the circuses pretty much got pressured enough to stop having elephants and large animals in the circuses. None of those animals were particularly being cared well for, or at least they weren't being cared for properly in their natural environments. And the only animals pretty much used in Magic these days are occasional doves and things like that, and goldfish, and honestly the doves and goldfish probably aren't even cared for that often. There definitely were some old magic tricks that straight up would kill a bird every time they did the trick, because it would have like a collapsible cage and it would crush the bird into a small compartment, killing it. There, I got an extra ball. But those are like tricks, I think, done maybe 100 years ago. But yeah, totally not worth it either to do a magic trick and entertain people and kill an animal in the process. And that's something you could certainly highlight, the beauty of rebroadcastable entertainment when we have with recording of music and video, and eventually interactive rebroadcastable entertainment in the form of video games. It's a shame that concept does not always apply, because watching someone play pinball, even you watching me now play pinball, is not anywhere as good as actually playing pinball. And me playing it in a virtual emulation here is not anywhere as good as me really playing this table in the real world. Like, that is quite the experience. And it's a little shocking to me. Wow, I got it in at the last second.
This ball is full of magic.
That was a secret ball lock.
The first ball is locked.
I don't know why we're advancing the clock, but we're advancing the clock. It's like Funhouse introduced the idea of advancing the clock. Maybe there was a table before then, but for me it was Funhouse that introduced that concept, and several tables just decided to go with it as a scoring metric, which it makes sense. If you wanted to have a scale of 0 to 12 or 0 to 24 or something somewhat close to that scale, advancing a clock makes a lot more sense, because that's something people would know about. Whereas a scale of 0 to 100 might be too high, scale 0 to 10 is a little obscure.
Multiball! Shoot for the trunk!
I think you can pretty well see also why this would be a very popular table amongst kids.
Jackpot is lit!
So you have to hit the blinking light one to relight the jackpot. And I'm still kind of warming up, so the idea of hitting a jackpot and getting the shot to the chest is still something I'm working on.
Go for the extra ball.
You have the comedy and drama masks as an animation.
Extra ball!
I didn't get all the way up that ramp, but I
Nice performance
still
is
got
about to begin.
good enough
For the
to
magic trunk.
for it to succeed.
Hocus pocus.
Do they say abracadabra? I bet they do at some point in this game, but they may keep that for a while. Most magicians don't say hocus pocus or abracadabra anymore
You must break
because
free.
they've become fairly cliche.
Shoot for the trunk!
There we've spelled theater, and I think started a 2-ball multi-ball.
You must concentrate.
There's the Magnasaver saving me again, which that is great, because previously Magnasaver was not strong enough. That felt like they had probably 2 or 3 magnets under the table that of different strength pulling back towards the location.
9 o'clock!
Madness starts at midnight. Oh, it is the left trigger that levitates the ball and then puts it in the left flipper. So theoretically, if I could do this really well, I can line myself up for a combo shot,
Magic. Lock is lit.
but it didn't work that 4th time, so maybe you only have so many times you can do it. Or maybe I just didn't hit the flipper fast enough. We've seen on tables, though, it being a scenario where you are particularly, if you're particularly good at hitting one shot over and over again, you can just play forever and rack up a massive score.
10 o'clock! Tonight's performance is about to begin.
Shoot for the magic trunk.
There's the magic trunk sink. Then there's the haunted basement and gives you bonuses.
Madness!
And now we're at Midnight Madness, and I've done all the standard goals. Not only that, in my first game, I've done several missions.
The second ball is locked.
I like the fact, really, that this has kind of simplistic multi-ball to it, where we've seen other tables try and have 3 or 4 multi-balls, but to activate any of the multi-balls is fairly complicated, and it makes for a table that might be really good for a pro, but pretty bad for a new player. This is the kind of table that would have potentially maybe saved the pinball industry if there was any way that you could have saved the pinball industry, which I guess there probably wasn't. It just kind of had to die. And I wonder if we are ever going to have something like that as far as video games. Probably not. In the same way that music is always going to be around and TV is always going to exist in some form or factor. It may be at some point video games get fairly niche compared to like virtual reality games or something, but short of us losing access to technology and electricity, I can't imagine mankind having a major recession in video games. Not like pinball. Pinball just had such a high barrier to entry as far as owning a table and or arcades existing. And that was a problem from day one. Like the very first pinball table that was ever created was a problem. And it frankly was a problem way before the first pinball table was made, because it was a problem with billiard tables. And in the same way, billiard tables still exist and billiards exist, but you've got to go to basically a pool hall to find a billiard table. They have to maintain and have a massive amount of equipment. They have to charge a pretty high cover, usually a per game cover, to make it even slightly financially viable. They have to have a massive amount of square footage. And there's really no way to play the game of billiards without all of that. Same is true for like basketball courts compared to soccer fields, where all you need is an empty field to play soccer, but you need hoops and usually paved road to play basketball. Now I'm wondering if there is a super jackpot. I like that there's a mirror that lets you see the pop-up bumpers in the top right. That's something I suggested previously, and almost certainly I subconsciously was just remembering that it existed on this table.
Shoot for the magic trunk.
This is one of those tables where I think kind of the worst thing you can do is keep the ball slow. This just does not feel like a table that would be fun if you slowed down the play and took time to take your shots. You might do better, certainly, but I wouldn't like it. So I got 2,699,000,000. Player 1, Master Magician, and the match. So I have like 3 credits, which credits mean nothing there. So yeah, first warm-up game went fairly long, about 20 minutes, and we got the highest score on the table, which I think that's fine. Honestly, the default scores on the table should be fairly short. Anyways, this has that DCS sound system, and I do vaguely recall that this table did sound really nice. It does sound pretty decent in the headphones that I'm listening to, but let's see. So advance the clock to midnight. If that's different than getting the mystery reward of midnight, that might be slightly more difficult. Score 100 million jackpot in the magic multiball. How do you get to 100 million jackpot? Let's see, the jackpot. Shoot the hole in the magic trunk before the timer counts down to score a jackpot worth 100 million points. The countdown is aborted if you hit any other targets before you shoot the trunk hole. If you fail to score the jackpot before the timer counts down, the magic trunk still lights for a jackpot. Shoot the trunk hole to score jackpot, which is a base value of 50 million points. Each time you score jackpot, the magic trunk will turn to hide the hole. It must be shot a number of times in order to relight the jackpot and expose the hole. The first time it needs 2 shots to relight. Each time after that it requires an additional shot up to 5 times. During Magic Multiball, there are several shots that will raise the jackpot value by 5 million, whether it's lit or not. That's the left outer loop. the left lightning loop, the right lightning loop, that's what I was calling the horseshoe, the right stairs, and yeah, they put stairs, arts on the loops. And a lot of tables could probably have benefited from that, having clear plastic loops and then having some art on the loops. But I imagine this was probably brand new technology to be able to print on the plastic loops without it being ruined. I wouldn't be surprised if they were stickers that were stuck to the bottom side and you were looking through it. Play all 8 illusions in one game, I assume. Win a game of digital pinball. Pinball starts with the digital pinball mode. The Haunted Basement Award is a digital version of pinball that is played on the display. Hit all 6 targets on the display to earn an extra ball. The Haunted Basement also awards random points values. Okay. And complete the final grand finale. To perform the grand finale, you must apprentice to complete the 4 magicianship levels. The 4 magicianship levels are the things at the bottom. It's a spell theater, play Magic Multiball, play Midnight Madness, and play all 8 illusions. So if you do that, you're going to do all the other wizard goals too. Now, unfortunately, what we have here, since we don't have the cheat mode, is there would be no way to cheat to get the illusions going. So you pretty much just want to start an illusion and
go for the center loop.
So we're going for the center loop, which they called the lightning. Honestly, I'm not sure if the magnet there is me controlling it or if the game is just deciding to do it automatically. In a funny way, this table kind of doesn't need a kickback if the magnet balls, the magnet savers worked every single time. So, but I would not be upset with a table that gave me both. Now, I vaguely recall the trapdoor is kind of impossible to hit with the right flipper. So if you don't get that shot done well, and I do believe there is a way to get the trapdoor to pop up and the ball stuck behind it. Eventually it releases, it goes back down, so, but it doesn't sneak in the ball into the scoop. I think that was something I pulled off unintendedly.
Stay right where you are.
Honestly, no table actually needs a kickback at all if there's a decent ball saver on it. That being said, kickback can add speed to the game instead of having to go through the whole hustle of restarting and relaunching the ball. And I appreciate when a table does decide to let you just keep the game in play and move the ball fast instead of slowing it down. There clearly is a gate behind there that lets the ball fall into a sinkhole. Yeah, the magnet ball doesn't always work.
Go for multi-ball.
This table, I don't think, lets you replay missions or select missions like Star Trek The Next Generation. Which arguably that is a nicer feature when you are allowed to do it that way and potentially replay missions, because that means you might decide that you're only good at one mission and you might just want to do that mission over and over again. But that is a pro player's feature, certainly. Whereas 99% of all players are really going to want to just see the variety and have fun. There is the 100 million reward. You have... It didn't tell me how much time I had actually to hit that, by the way. So I didn't really realize that it was only going to be a few seconds. That would be like a 12-second timer, not a 4-second timer. I feel like pinball probably does teach people to be smarter and faster, as far as the telling the difference between I need this done in 3 seconds versus 12 seconds versus 10 seconds. Now, arguably, while I call that smarter and faster, in almost every situation that would be just described as hyperactive and ADD too. So there might be a danger in having someone who is ADHD play pinball, but maybe not. They may love it greatly. There might be people with like hyperthyroidism that love pinball. There might be people with hypothyroidism that can't play a single game because it moves too fast for them, the way their brain works. Everybody's different. But yeah, one thing I have learned even in 2021 is that it can get fairly annoying as to wait for like a microwave to cook for that extra 10 seconds if you're just watching a kettle boil, or I'm mixing metaphors here, but yeah, it can be very slow to watch a timer go down for 10 seconds if you're not doing anything. And I've started watching all like YouTube videos at twice the speed, so I can't even really bother to listen to most people speak at their normal speaking time. In fact, I recommend everybody watch my videos at twice the speed, and I probably sound a little bit better because of that. But yeah, certainly some people can't do that. And yeah, I wouldn't begrudge somebody if they did say pinball was too flashy and too random. This is a very, very great example of flashy and random. The theming on this table is just excellent.
It's 2 o'clock.
Because it manages to totally allow for every element to feel like it is something unique to that theme. Like, the Vanish Award is just a secret hidden sinkhole, but it feels like Vanish is something that would have only existed on this table. Alright. So the saw theoretically just split the ball in half, and now you have 2 pinballs instead of 1. So they call that the tiger saw instead of calling it like sawing a woman in half. I think I've seen a lot of illusionist magicians, and I think I've only seen the saw the woman in half done with a man once, and that's in part because of the way it's actually accomplished, but there's also not in part also statement on just how many male assistants exist in general under Magic.
the center staircase.
And I guess they didn't want to call it sawing a woman in half when they already have a levitating woman, which I've never seen a levitating woman done by a male, and that is definitely in part because of the way it's done. Or more accurately, it has to do with the types of clothes women are reasonably expected to wear versus the types of clothes men are reasonably expected to wear. You can't do the levitating woman unless you're wearing a long flowing skirt / dress. And you probably could try and pull it off, but it would be weird. It would look different.
You have the magic.
There is certainly also, with the beginning of The Masked Magician and Penn and Teller's Phyllis, kind of expanding it with a wink and a nod, there is a large expansion around the idea of getting rid of the secrecy that was over-exaggerated around magic tricks. I definitely would not enjoy magic tricks if I saw every single trick and then had no clue whatsoever as to how anything was ever being done. Like, I'm too analytical and too curious. And I think that might in part be why magic often is not something kids stick with or continue to be interested in, is because they can go, oh wow, how did they do that? But if the parents can't say, well, this is how they did it, or it'll be really annoying if you know how it was done, then you're gonna just lose the interest in it. And the same is true for me, at least, as far as video games. Like, if I didn't know, at least in general, how a video game was programmed and how it worked, I don't think I'd be particularly as interested in them. If I didn't know the electronics, at least in general, as to how pinball machines' components work, I probably wouldn't be quite as interested in them. It is a very booming sound effect that when that MagnaSave activates, I would like to have kind of seen it to... I'm gonna try and see if we can get pinball. Alright, so we didn't have to actually advance it to midnight ourselves, which that's nice. And then notice how it went quiet and plays the ball lock sound effect instead of sticking to playing the Midnight Madness sound effects. I guess Midnight Madness is probably a hurry-up jackpot that counts down.
Multiball.
And I suppose you only get what you pick if you hit the trunk. So it is a skill shot, but it's a pick your skill shot idea.
3, 2, 1.
Notice no ball saver on that jackpot at all. The next illusion randomly changes when you hit a slingshot.
Shoot for the magic trunk.
And while they try to make this fairly easy on you, they kind of don't really do it, because the trunk hole could have some angles to it, and there could be a wider gap to lead the ball towards that center shot, but they don't do that, so you do kind of have to hit it dead on with the center of the ball lining up for the center of the hole. but they do make it wide enough that you could potentially bounce the ball
Welcome back to the theater of magic.
from an angle into it instead of having to
The metamorphosis.
hit it with the right flipper and only the right flipper. So that they're kind of meeting you halfway in terms of difficulty. And that's not the worst thought.
Shoot up the right staircase.
And while you do have an announcer who plays
You
a
must
little bit
concentrate.
as an assistant voice, and it does feel
Lock is
better to design the table to have two voices, the lady magician voice actress here is given center stage. She is the hero of the story, and this is the only table we've seen that at all. Like every other time we've had a female, they've at best been a secondary sidekick, at worst they've just been a token or an object of desire that often they just scream and are being kidnapped or something, like Attack from Mars, or they're the girlfriend that says 3 lines and Attack from
two.
the Blue Lagoon. This table is all about hitting that treasure chest. They really built a table here that over focuses on that one experimental design to the point where it's not super surprising that the one time I did see this table, and I believe I saw it several different times over the course of several different months, it was always broken. Like, it's a complicated piece of mechanical design, to say the least.
Amazing skill.
Here is another ball.
That's one of those rare instances where letting the ball drain and letting the ball saver save you.
Shoot for the trunk.
It's slightly one note,
Push the chain.
so I guess the question
From the trunk.
would be, do I think Theater of Magic is better than Twilight Zone?
Amazing.
I think it is. I think it plays better. I think it's a more interesting, more varied game. Honestly, I think it's better than High Speed 2 and High Speed 1. And honestly, I think it's better than Funhouse because of the variety there.
Levitating woman.
So
Shoot the center staircase.
I think
Levitating.
my order, and I'm pushing it, even trying to make a list of the best pinball tables in my personal opinion, but I think you go with Star Trek: The Next Generation as the best table. I think you then go with Theater of Magic as the second best table that I've seen so far. Then I think you go Funhouse. Then I think you go Twilight Zone. Then I think you go High Speed 1. Then I think you go High Speed 2. And
The second ball is locked.
then it gets into some weirdness as far as, like, Addams Family is not really a fun table to play, but it's something that I think a lot of people talk about, so it should probably be somewhere around 9th place. But I don't know how to really justify doing that score.
100 million.
So now, if we were to jackpot again, is this 100 million again? Nope. Second jackpot was really just 60 million.
Make the ball vanish.
You have the magic. Magic.
There's no shot on this table that is built around the idea of doing a half energy shot too. Like, there's no angle here where you have to be a little careful. There's no angle where the ball is likely to just limp-wristedly roll back to the other side. Like, even the Vanish doing the loop doesn't really seem like it is built around the idea of going weakly around that ramp. It seems like it's just a gate back there that makes it vanish. It is fairly demanding to do each of the illusions, and so it is nice that they've randomized them, where we definitely have seen some other tables that have focused so much on going in a linear order that they get boring.
Go for the center loop. Hurry up.
This is a mission where changing it up and making you shoot somewhere else does kind of
For the captive ball.
change the things.
Tiger Star jackpot.
And when the Tiger Saw splits the ball in half, is it hitting the captive balls that gives you the jackpots? Yes, it is. So that once again speeds up the whole process and does you something different, gives you something else different to do. Arguably, this table might be a little random where it jumps you into other things while you're focusing on certain goals and certain missions, but honestly, for pinball, I think that kind of works because if you can't accomplish the shots needed to do the certain mission you're in, but you are accomplishing other shots, it does make a lot of sense to just kind of free range draw a player around and have them do whatever they can do and feel like they're winning, even if they actually aren't actively accomplishing goals. Like, if I told a kid to clean his room and instead he baked a cake, I wouldn't be incredibly upset with them. Depending on how much of a mess they made of the kitchen.
1 o'clock.
Hocus pocus.
Although I probably would tell the kid that he needs to use his words and negotiate if he's gonna trade services. Like that.
Shoot into the trapdoor.
Alright. So you want to start an illusion, then you have to hit the trunk to actually start the illusion.
The center staircase.
And they want me to hit the center staircase with the levitating woman. Is there a way to hit the center staircase?
It's 2 o'clock.
You must
Shoot for the captive ball.
shoot up the center staircase.
Notice that there is really no goal
Within you.
here on any of the wizard goals to just get a specific height score. So the levitating woman was a thing that was still going on, and then we ran out of time on it. And the captive ball, the 2 captive balls in that setup barely goes anywhere, which really highlights that you don't need a captive ball to shoot the ball really far in any direction. You can just have it right next to another one, and that's good enough, and right next to a standing target at the end.
The metamorphosis.
And notice if you hit the treasure chest, the magic chest,
Ball is locked.
while it's spinning, you don't have to sink a ball to actually start the mission.
The second ball is locked.
This is probably going to have to be our last game.
3 o'clock.
There's
You must
not a lot we can do otherwise without the pro mode. We could just play for another hour, certainly, and I'd love to, but
Multiball.
I don't know if
Shoot for
that
the trump.
really accomplishes much. And while in general you are aiming for the chest during multi-ball, your bigger goal, I suppose, is to just not let all 3 balls sink at the same time and in the gameplay on you.
Magic.
Yeah, there must not be any kickback on this table. So I could go with the standard winds of a center peg and a kickback on both sides. And that on almost any table would be still accurate. I don't know if you really want to try and make the ball vanish or if you want to focus on just hitting the chest over and over again. Yeah, I think we can play another game.
Welcome back to the theater of magic. Hocus pocus. Shoot up the center staircase.
The 3 blinking lights in front of the chest probably indicate how many you have to hit, how many times you have to hit it before you can start the next mission, which does kind of highlight that to do all of the missions you're going to have to hit that chest a lot, and that is just the case that you're going to be doing a lot of pinball playing to accomplish everything on a table like this. Although I think you can get to the grand finale on this table a little bit easier than you can get to the final frontier in Star Trek The Next Generation, because there's just more missions. Plus, the missions might be a little bit easier on this table. You could have had a launcher on this table, but I don't know how thematically you would have introduced something like that. And it's kind of crazy to say to suggest adding anything to this table, because this table has so much on it anyways. Alright, pinball. So it's a digital pinball that's not particularly accurate. Yeah. This is almost a great example of the level of emulation you're likely to have, and almost got that goal. I kind of wish the magnet save would also turn on the ball saver, but that would be fairly redundant to pull that off.
It's 2 o'clock.
Here is another ball.
This also feels like one of those tables that could auto-launch the ball always, and yet they want you to be involved. I feel like any table that has a push-button launcher should probably have a fake electric plunger on it anyways, just to have that feeling of the old-school pinball tables. That is silly to suggest. Well, it's also silly that even though I know this is a button launcher, I think this is a button launcher, I've been messing up the launches multiple times. Maybe it isn't a button launcher. Maybe it does have an old school thing. They could have put like a magician's wand handle on it if they wanted to get a little bit fancier. But honestly, that's the kind of thing that might make the budget a little bit too high.
The first ball is locked.
Yeah, it's gotta be an analog plunger. An analog plunger for really no reason, but I'll take it. Like I was just saying, I would much prefer this. It would be nice if it didn't go directly to the right in lane and instead came out under onto the table by curving to the left. That's a slight modification I think they could have made, or someone could make. But I could almost see an argument in both directions too, where if somebody came out with a 2021 remake of Theater of Magic and they changed even one tiny bit, people would complain massively. Yeah, I guess as long as I'm not getting good games, I'm not going that long.
To the Theater of Magic.
So there's just a high level of boldness one would have to have, and frankly arrogance that one would have to remake Theater of Magic and say, well, we're going to keep most of the shots, but we're going to change this one thing here and this one thing there. And the way you get away with that, I suppose, is you just create Theater of Magic 2 and you say, well, this is not replacing this is just a successor. In the same way that Jackbot really isn't Pinbot's replacement. And arguably there are a lot of people that would still prefer to play Pinbot over Jackbot. But that doesn't mean Jackpot's not a decent game.
Stay right where you are.
There's this thought in Magic around ethical magic, in the sense that you're not pretending to do something dangerous or doing something dangerous that somebody else might try to emulate. There definitely are some tricks that will get people killed. The most notorious one of that is the Vanishing Bullet, where literally they shoot a bullet and two magicians shoot bullets at each other and pretend to catch them in their teeth. Like 12 people have died from doing the trick, and it's easy to accidentally shoot yourself or shoot your friend. The escape from a milk jug trap or escape from a water tank trap, as it would be done nowadays, is incredibly dangerous.
The first ball is locked.
I am noticing that in the straitjacket animation on the top of it, they had the magician in even less coverage. Yeah, when you see her, she just has high sleeves and nothing covering her shoulders. But when you look at the flyer, she has a like vest that covers her shoulders. So yeah, different art was done for the LCDs, and they're not high resolution, so I imagine it would be kind of hard to depict that outfit, but also I imagine they just wanted to show more skin. And she is not particularly far away from wearing like a Playboy bunny outfit, where it's just a want to call it bustier, but I don't think that's the actual word. Corset type outfit might be the closest thing. What, I don't know what you'd call a loose corset. If I was gonna make a Theater of Magic 2, I'd probably just bring back the same magician, or maybe go kid-friendly with it, and have the illusions be kid-friendly magic tricks. So instead of doing big grand illusions, stage magic that can't be emulated, I would have them do simple, like card tricks and vanishes and street magic things very safe and very easy to replicate. There definitely are some kids out there that have gotten very good at magic for their age because of the internet and the democratization, as it were, of magic by tricks being available to look up on the internet. In the old days, there's literally one person who would have a book explaining how it was done, and they would sell it only to people they knew, and only a few copies.
You must concentrate.
And you would have to know that person directly. Nowadays, almost no trick is that unique. Some of the biggest, newest tricks by like celebrity magicians, I imagine, are something like that, but like it would be fairly easy to do a bunny from a hat, for instance, or at some point I imagine a bunny from a hat would be a highly guarded secret. And yeah, that could be a kid-friendly version of the stables. You have like a little girl or a little boy pulling a stuffed bunny from a hat in Theater of Magic 2. Well, I could play this table all day, frankly. Let's see. Playing all 8 illusions just requires putting all the tables. Just playing long enough and keeping the ball on the table long enough. And winning a game of digital pinball, that's just a matter of time. I almost got it the one time we've played pinball. A heavy focus on sinking into the hatch certainly would improve that. And then doing the grand finale, because we don't have a way of cheating, is really just going to be a matter of time of doing all the illusions. And so you have to complete the grand finale, which I don't know if completing the grand finale means starting it and then draining the ball. It lasts at 90 seconds, so I don't know if you have to actually hit each of these. Or you complete all the letters in Magic Theater. Interesting. So, yeah, completing that probably means in any way you can. So it really would just be a matter of time to get these last 3 ones done. But take note that there's like 169 achievements still left in Pinball Arcade that I haven't gotten in. I have yet to do a single table all the way through its wizard goals, and we don't have that many tables left. So obviously this would go in our favorites. Let's check. We don't have any operator mode or anything like that, so our overall score here, as far as people, assuming some of these are cheaters, you can see 50 billion seems to be kind of a reasonable high score overall. Let's see where our score is. I don't think we scored particularly high. 2,699,000. That puts me in 20,241th place, which that's not super surprising because I imagine that there is a much higher number of people who have played this table over the lifetime of this table being available on Pinball Arcade, and a much higher percentage of people in general who would be interested in playing Theater of Magic. It's hardly like it's a forgotten gem. Weekly, I'm at, playing this on a Friday, I'm at 29th position of what I suspect will be somewhere around the 120th position minimum. Let's see. It would be slightly shocking if this got up to 300 as it's going, but it seems like we're going to hit that. Notice that there's a lot of people here that did not score particularly big in playing the table. And I could see if you were a big pinball fan, but with not a lot of time, or you just had a lot of tables, that you might want to play on a weekly schedule and just play one game. There's 465 people played this table this week. In monthly, I'm in the 86th position, and this is the 16th day on the month. So, yeah. Could I continue playing and get up to a high monthly score? Yeah, if I just doubled my score, I'd be in the top 25. If I tripled my score, I'd be in the top 20. Assuming some of these are either really, really lucky or cheaters, you might even, at the end of the day, make it up into the top 10. One of the things that good video game leaderboards do, and very few leaderboards for video games are good, is that they will verify scores at the end of a month or at the end of the week and toss out the cheaters. But certainly a lot of people don't, and the cheaters just are allowed to cheat, particularly if they're only cheating a little bit. Well, not to say that any of those are guaranteed to be cheaters. There could just be people better at playing the game than me. Let's go back to Twilight Zone, 1993. So 2 years previous. And this table has a lot of the same feel and concept as far as Theater of Magic. But just looking at the table, you can tell it's a lot more visually busy, and these shots are a little bit crazier with the top left and top right shot. You've got these three bumpers that are taking up a lot of space in the lower part of the playfield, where Theater of Magic hid all of that and used the mirror to make that not be a thing. The brightness on this table is crazy because you can't even see the clock. There is a clock that's just like a digital metric in Theater of Magic instead of having an actual physical clock. There is a sinkhole that's about in the same place. This is one of the split design levels where the left side of the table is pretty much ignored in its design. And then you have like 2/3 of the right side of the table becomes a much thinner pinball table. Twilight Zone is kind of one of those tables where it's like everybody says you should own it and you should play it, but it's not something I would play as much as Theater of Magic, because it is a medium to an advanced table that you would have to practice around quite a bit, and you're going to have to do the same shots. There are a decent number of shots here, and in all fairness, Theater of Magic really wants you to practice that one shot to the trunk, but The sound effects I've say are a little bit quieter, a little bit less enthusiastic. The music that's playing in the background does not really even work well with the yeah, it doesn't even really work with the Twilight Zone. Like, the music is some weird new soundtrack design. You don't get quick 2-ball multiballs. You don't get easy multiball, 3-ball multiballs. You don't have as many ramps and as many shots. You don't have the Magna saves. The gumball concept is so extremely rare for you to actually pull off. You're not gonna see it. I kind of feel like the aliens that show up in Twilight Zone, that's the first time they show up. And then every time we've seen a table with aliens otherwise has been a reference to that. Now, arguably, Bailey was the designer of Theater of Magic and Twilight Zone, so Bailey as a company can't be really described as the worst pinball table designer by any means.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
Let's see, let's play a game of Star Trek here.
Suggestions.
We could destroy the asteroids.
There is some theming issues certainly with this table. If this was not a Star Trek themed table, it would be a little bit harder to love it. But it still may be, in my book, the best table.
Evasive maneuvers.
Like there I got a center lane shot that drained in the center lane, but that, if I recall correctly, rarely happens.
Bonjour, mon capitaine. Q, what are you doing here?
Every time you start you launch a ball, you can start a mission. Every time you start a mission, you have full character dialogue. This table, more than any other table, feels like you're actually having people interact with people, where even in Theater of Magic, it really is just call outs to, hey, shoot this, shoot that. We know you're playing a pinball table. This one kind of doesn't break that fourth wall. This feels like you're actually acting as a character in Star Trek. Yeah, I might change my opinion actually. Like, this table's a little bit more open, so I guess if you wanted a more open Star Trek might be better. But if you want to accomplish more things, and if you're a younger player, I think Theater of Magic's better. So if I'm open to changing my mind, which any person should be, I think playing them back to back, I would say this is a table that should be in the second place compared to Theater of Magic, because Theater of Magic is more accessible to younger players, and as such, it's easier to actually accomplish things. You're not going to have dead shots in Theater of Magic like you can in Star Trek. You're not going to hit a center lane shot that can drain limply back down the center, like we've been able to pull that off several times. You're not going to be pushed so hard in Theater of Magic to do all the illusions as much as doing all the missions here is pushed. And when you're not focusing on the mission on this table, you basically have nothing to do.
We've all gone back in time.
You certainly could take the idea of Theater of Magic and put a giant board cube in the middle of the center table and have a spinning board cube with different sides to hit different
Q, what are you
things
doing here? Let's play a little game. Q, we
instead
don't
of
have
the
time for
Borg
your
ship
game.
that was only seen in like the first season.
Congratulations, Lieutenant.
Honestly, Theater of Magic almost certainly looked at Star Trek The Next Generation and took many of the good elements from it and improved and iterated. Pinball obviously is an incredibly iterative process in the same way that video games developers play other video games and steal ideas from them. Steal in a good way.
Our ship is disabled. We need uranium spheres.
Oops. I thought it was the flipper that launched them.
We
But
need them now.
So this is the 2-ball multi-ball. What's funny is Star Trek doesn't really, like the Enterprise doesn't really have a launcher. So what they would be torpedo tubes, and they don't mention torpedoes really that much on this table, nor do they mention the phasers.
Readings indicate lock is lit, sir.
Now I'm just going quiet because I'm just playing the game. Yeah, I would say Next Generation was a slightly less fun game, and it's a Williams table. So I do think Theater of Magic probably deserves the #1 spot.
Space.
And is there anything else to look at here? If anything, Williams has a kind of cavalcade of good tables, but then some of them aren't that great. Where Bailey has made less tables, but more of them I think are slightly interesting. Apparently there are 2 other Elvira-esque tables, which would be Scared Stiff would be one of them, and then the other one would be Haunted House, I think, but don't know how that would be the case because Haunted House is not made by Bailey. Where is Haunted House? Or the table I'm thinking about. Maybe it's not even called Haunted House. Monster Bash might be an Elvira-esque one, but that's a Williams table. Although it might not be that weird because Elvira may have just sold her likenesses to several different companies over the years. Like, it wouldn't have been a terrible idea for her to do. Yeah, Haunted House is a Gottlieb table. So you could potentially have Haunted House, Elvira, Scared Stiff, and Monster Bash, and you'd have some Elvira-esque tables. Maybe not all of them actually have Elvira in it. Haunted House, I know, doesn't. And we have not gotten to the point where we've gotten to Scared Stiff or Monster Bash. Yeah, well, Theater Magic was great, which was good because we needed a win. These tables so far, with the kind of exception of Jackpot and Attack on Mars, is fine as an average. Attack from Mars is fine. And people seem to like and overrate Whitewater a little bit more than I did. I think Soccer's fine too. But yeah, we've been on average getting at best 1 out of 3 tables to be average or good, and not a lot of great ones, which I wasn't really surprised by that either, because my eye definitely jumped the Theater of Magic after we played Twilight Zone. But fingers crossed, Whodunit is good. And then Junkyard should be good, if I recall correctly. I hear Safecracker may be a little overrated, but it's kind of weird, so that's probably good too. Scared Stiff hopefully is good. Arabian Nights is good. I can't even tell you what that says, so I have no idea what that table is. And then Medieval Madness, if I recall correctly, is great. No Good Gophers is pretty great. Starship Troopers could be great, or it could just be a bad license. And then Cactus and Championship Pub may be mediocre, but then I suspect Monster Bash will be great. So even though we've maybe had a bit of a dud from this point to this point, we're going to potentially have almost 8 tables straight of good to average at best tables. And then we get into the 2000 era, which is really just curations of the best tables, in my opinion. So I suspect we may find that we end with quite the bang, in that none of these tables are going to be particularly that bad. And even if they are bad, just being that next generation of tables, they may be so complicated that they're intriguing to play, even if the angles are pretty wonky. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wish list. Thank you for watching. Have a good